Breaking news. New cameras from Fuji and OM have leaked. I'll show you all the details and photos. An important update on the Sony A9 Mark III. It's good news and the cutest camera I've ever seen. Japan literally launched a toy real camera to the moon. I'll show you the pictures and what it looks like, but first I want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace makes all of this possible. They've been sponsoring us for 10 years now.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy for you to make a professional website or online portfolio.
And we've been using their websites for 10 years, and it has been wonderful on both accounts. Start at squarespace.com/Tony. It's completely free to try it out. You can browse their templates, design something beautiful, and see how it makes your work, your passion, your business look better. Sell products, take appointments from clients. Squarespace websites can do it all. Start at squarespace.com/Tony, and when you love it, the coupon code Tony will get you 10% off. Thank you for all your support these many years. Squarespace. My top story, the Sony A9 Mark III is shipping. I can't even believe it's shipping so soon. I was expecting it much later. Adorama is saying it'll ship on February 8th, so you can pick it up at this link. Technically, there's still a pre-order, but people are receiving them in Europe already, like buying customers. And I thought they were going to be waiting several more months. I'm shocked that Sony is getting these into people's hands early. Now for some space camera news. JAXA, which is Japan's version of America's NASA, you know, they launch rockets into space and stuff. They put a lander on the moon, what they call a soft landing, because it didn't just impact the moon and destroy itself, but it landed gracefully and managed to survive, albeit a little bit skewed. They wanted to be able to take pictures of their moon lander, so they basically made a little selfie camera. And they worked with a toy company called Tomy, and Tomy made a design based on a transformer. It's a ball that launches out from what they call the slim lander, the smart lander for investigating moon, and then it unfolds, pops out a camera, and can kind of move and orient itself with its two sphere halves. And it is the coolest and cutest way to get a picture from a very, very far away spot. These are definitely the most scientifically interesting selfies I've seen in a long time. So congratulations to Japan, and thanks for making that camera a little cooler than it needed to be. Now in Fuji news, the Fuji X100VI, or is it the Fuji X100VI? It's leaked. It's launching on February 20th, and this is the successor to the incredibly popular X100V. It's a fixed lens camera, and the lens should stay the same. It's a 23mm f2 lens, but it's an APS-C sensor, so in 35mm terms, it's more like a 35mm f2.8. You can attach external lenses to go a little more telephoto or a little wider, but they screw onto the front. But this has been so popular, it's just been sold out everywhere, largely because it's a fashionable camera. Like it's beautiful, it's compact, and it gives you an analog experience. So in those ways, it provides a superior experience to a smartphone. It has, you know, analog dials at the top for the shutter speed and the ISO, and it has a truly optical viewfinder. So if you haven't ever worked with one of the X100 cameras, check them out. This is the 6th version of it. And this version improves upon the 5th version that we own for our own personal use because we love it so much by adding a 40 megapixel X-trans sensor. This is a sensor we've tested with the XH2 and XT5, and it's a very good sensor. And they're also giving you sensor stabilization. That's always something I missed on this, because I love the film analog style of digital camera, but getting shaky pictures, there's nothing cool about that, right? I like to be able to take longer exposures without having to bust out a tripod, so I'm really glad to see it with some IBIS. Thanks to FujiRumors.com for providing us that information. As always, you do really good work. Another new camera has leaked via CanonRumors.com and MirrorlessRumors.com. This is the OM-1 Mark II. And if you aren't familiar with this formerly was Olympus cameras. They made micro four thirds cameras that were very popular and very leading edge for many years, but then they decided to exit the camera industry. They were losing money on it. So they sold off the camera division to a Japanese company called JIP. This is kind of how Japanese companies exit businesses, because it's not easy to simply lay people off. It's kind of easier to sell off the entire division. And in the process of transferring the division, you can kind of lay people off. It's a legal workaround. So I've been following JIP particularly closely because I've been interested to see whether they would attempt to sort of reinvigorate the business and become tech leaders again and grow the business, or if they would simply take the existing Olympus brand assets and try to wring remaining cash from any brand loyalty that they've had. And so far, it hasn't been great news. Most of their new releases have simply been the old releases with some very minor tweaks and software updates. Well, here is the latest camera that's coming in just a couple of days, January 30th. First, it's almost exactly the same as the current OM-1 that exists. One of the biggest changes is the branding will change. It will no longer be branded Olympus, but rather it will be branded OM System. The sensor is the same, which is a micro four thirds 20 megapixel sensor, and that's kind of disappointing because we just recently tested the OM-1 for wildlife, and with the right lens, it performed very, very well. But our biggest complaint was it's only 20 megapixels, and with wildlife you frequently need to crop, so I do wish they could have upped that megapixel number. It also has the same processor, but they're saying the buffer will double in size, and that's good news because the buffer could fill up really quickly. And the autofocus is supposed to be better, just sort of vaguely. And my take is it's probably similar processing hardware with some software tweaks that could be a firmware update, but they'll hold them back and try to get you to upgrade. The IBIS, the sensor stabilization, has improved from 8 stops to 8.5 stops. So that could just be a minor software tweak. The rumors are also saying it'll have improved ergonomics and haptics. Ergonomics are kind of like how it feels in your hand, and haptics are the little vibrations that you get when you push on virtual buttons sometimes. So I don't know that any of this sounds like anything that's going to push anybody to upgrade. And based on what I know now, it's definitely not going to have Canon, Nikon, Sony users selling their gear and switching over to micro four thirds. But we're always excited to see something new, even if it's a minor improvement. The price has leaked at 23.99 euros in Europe, and I'm guessing they're going to keep the price in the States the same at 19.99, because I think once you broke that $2,000 barrier, well, suddenly you might as well go to $2,500, right? So probably the same price, virtually the same camera, but a couple of minor tweaks. They also have a couple of lenses coming out. One we have pictures of already, so we know this is real. It is the OM-150 to 600 f5 to 6.3. This is a consumer grade lens that will probably mostly be used for wildlife because, well, once you do the crop factor conversion with a micro four thirds sensor, the equivalent is a 300 to 1200 millimeter f10 to f12 lens. So 1200 millimeters is actually incredibly difficult to use because the angle of view is so tiny. Now that actually works well with a low megapixel sensor. You want to be able to really fill the frame. And with a zoom lens like that, you'd be able to zoom back to track a flying bird and then zoom in tighter and tighter as the bird settled down, so you could really fill the frame and make the most of those 20 megapixels. So it could be a good combination. I will say though, it seems to be a Sigma lens. If I put those pictures up against the Sigma lens, they look pretty indistinguishable in the major features. The top camera here is the OM lens, and you can see the little blue ring on it, and the finish on it, the way the rubber grip is, are all Olympus signatures. But if you look at all the main design characteristics, like the foot of it and the knob that's on the collar, it seems to be pretty much the same lens. There's a couple of things that make this uncomfortable though. The lens is a Sigma full frame lens, which means that you would only be using about half of the optics of the lens. You're carrying around a much bigger and heavier lens than you would be if it were properly designed for micro four thirds. It's also actually putting a lot of pixel density in the center of what we found isn't the sharpest lens, so you might not get results that you're necessarily happy with. Also, the leaked price says it's going to be about 2,700 euros, which would mean about $2,200 in the United States. But if you get that same Sigma lens for a different platform like the Canon DSLR or Sony, it's about $1,500. So I have seen Nikon do this also, where they rebrand third-party lenses and then charge a significant amount more for them. And I always kind of hate it. Like, if you're actually going to be sinking an extra $700 to get this same lens, especially with the Micro Four Thirds system kind of petering out, you might be better off just taking that $700 and investing it in another system where you could just get the native Sigma lens instead of this adapted, oversized full-frame lens. Sorry to be a bummer. Another leaked OM lens is also kind of a bummer. This is the OM-9-18 f4 to f5.6.2, and it's basically a wide-angle kit lens. It's an inexpensive consumer lens, and the rumors are saying that it is exactly the same lens as the original, but they're taking off the Olympus branding and using the OM system branding. My hunch is that they had an agreement with Olympus when they bought the division that they could continue to use the Olympus name for some period of time, but that they would need to scrub their inventory and re-release everything with a different name after, a couple of years, something like that. And so they must be approaching that time limit. And so they're scrubbing the Olympus name. Even if they aren't necessarily adding anything new to the product inventory, they still need to refresh it and re-release everything. And seeing all this is kind of confirming my worst fears. And I have to ask, OM, are you okay? Can we hope to see any real innovation from OM system now that it's been bought out? Or are they really just doing the most minor things to convince the most loyal people to buy updated products? Because that's kind of what it's feeling like now. And if that's the case, I don't know that I can ever really recommend the system. I need to see that people buying into the system have a future, because camera systems are a long-term investment. You are locked in to a particular set of cameras and lenses based on the fixed proprietary lens mount. And as you can see from me showing off a Hasselblad camera from the 50s, people can continue to use these systems for 80 years, provided they have continued support. And thank goodness Hasselblad has continued to support this old 500 series body and bring it into the modern world. That's what a long-term investment is. A long-term investment is not getting the exact same camera rebranded with the buffer doubled, while your friend who bought into Sony, Canon, Nikon, or Hasselblad still gets to play with the latest and greatest technology. What do you think? Write in the comments. If you're a Micro Four Thirds fanatic and I'm completely missing the game, let me know about it. And if you are a Micro Four Thirds fan, I would urge you to check out our two most recent wildlife lens videos, where we compared the OM-1 with lenses against other gear, and they actually did really, really well. Don't forget to subscribe to see our live show every Thursday at 5 o'clock. Lots of tutorials coming up really soon, and additional reviews for cameras and lenses, some things that still aren't released. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the best place to start when you need any kind of presence on the web. Sure, you jump to just thinking of your social media, right? The social media is not enough because somebody else controls it. They will actually put ads for your competitors there. You want to use your social media to direct people to your own custom domain. I have northrupphotography.com, and I can sell prints there and show off work in the way that I think it should be showed off, with no advertisements filling your screen, optimized for desktops, mobile devices, whatever it is. Squarespace can provide it. So get started today. Try it out. It's free. No credit card required. Squarespace.com/Tony. And when you love it, the coupon code Tony gets you 10% off. Thank you, Squarespace. Bye.